Ar žinojote, kad didesnis šansas būti nutrenktam žaibo nei tapti NASA astronautu? Tačiau rudenį įvyksianti misija Inspiration 4 gali tai iš esmės pakeisti. Vasarį SpaceX įkūrėjas Elon Musk paskelbė apie pirmą privačią misiją į kosmosą Inspiration 4. Netrukus pasaulį apskriejo žinia, kad visas vietas raketoje išpirko amerikiečių milijardierius ir profesionalus pilotas Isaacman. Jis pranešė, kad su savimi pasiims 3 žmones, kurie paaukos vaikų ligoniniai ir vėžio tyrimams. Į kelionę viskas įskaičiuota – profesionalus astronautų mokymai ir kelias dienas truksiantis skrydis į kosmosą. Su Jared pasikalbėjome apie tai, kaip jis ruošiasi misijai, ko reikia norint prie jo prisijungti ir kodėl svarbu tyrinėti kosmosą. Okay, so Jared, my first question is, what would be the first thing you're gonna do when you're in space?
That's a great question. So I'm sure I'm going to try and take a moment to look outside and, reflect on that unbelievable view, looking down on Earth from such an altitude. I also imagine it's going to be hard to pull me away from the controls. I am a pilot, and I think, probably the first time being in orbit, I'm going to want to, take a look at the screens and make sure everything's working okay.
So like a real professional, what if you go to space and then, you want to go back again and again and again and again?
Well, that's the dream. That's a big part of what Inspiration 4 is about, is so that everybody can get a chance to go up and explore among the stars. And this mission is the first step in that direction. So I think we have to get this one right so that others can follow. And then, we'll see what happens down the road if I wind up going up again. But right now, we're really focused on making sure that Inspiration 4 is a big success.
Mm-hmm. We will speak about Inspiration 4 a little bit later in our conversation. But generally, why should we invest in space exploration? Why should countries and companies invest in that?
Well, I think it's two-part, and it's about balance, because there are a lot of important things that we need to do here on Earth that have absolutely nothing to do with space, right? That's why a big part of our mission is raising funds and awareness for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital with the goal of trying to cure childhood cancer, because that's a real problem that's devastating the lives of many families around the world, right? But we also have an obligation to try and make progress. And that can take the form of, technological advances here on Earth and in the world beyond ours through space exploration. Because I do believe that the world is a more interesting place when people can go and venture among the stars. And I do think the answer to some of life's greatest questions live out, in the world beyond ours.
Like probably, for example, are we alone in the universe? One of these questions that we are all waiting to be answered.
That's right.
And the private space exploration, how close do you think we are to regular space tourism?
I think we are pretty close. So, the example I give a lot is Charles Lindbergh's solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean. That was one person, and it was very expensive. And 12 years later, Pan Am released the first commercial transatlantic service. So it was only 12 years from that one person's individual flight across the Atlantic Ocean before transatlantic flight was available to everybody. And I'm not saying that this is going to be 12 years or 20 years, but I do know we're closer now than we've ever been, where everyday people, not astronauts, not NASA astronauts or European astronauts or Russian astronauts, can go and explore among the stars. We are much closer.
Mm-hmm. What kind of possibilities do you think private space flight, private space exploration does open up?
Well, a number of things. First, anytime we put something in orbit, whether it's human beings or cargo, we are making it more affordable and more accessible for a lot of purposes. Take right now what SpaceX is doing with Starlink. They're going to deliver a high-speed internet connection all over the world to some of the farthest reaching places, some of the hardest reaching places in the world. And access to information is incredibly powerful. We have no idea what it could give birth to in different places, right? So that's being made possible by every human space flight, whether it's NASA or European or private and commercial like this is because we're making things more affordable for everyone else thereafter. But I do think there's other things too, like being able to travel from point A to B in, minutes, not hours or days. If we use rocket technology, you could take off in New York City and land, in London in probably like 7 minutes or 10 minutes, right? We're early days of that, but you could actually have much faster forms of commercial travel than we've ever seen before.
Mm-hmm. Small countries such as Lithuania used to not participate into this space race, I would call it. Do you agree that now it has changed and space exploration doesn't belong to gigantic organizations like NASA or European Space Agency or big countries like, the USA, of course?
Yeah, I certainly think that, as the years have gone by, space is being made more accessible to people all over the world, right? I mean, I actually think Inspiration 4 is a great example of that because it's the first time people are going up into orbit and it wasn't, paid for by a superpower. It was, everyday people getting the opportunity to go. So you never know. I mean, it's not going to surprise me at all if in the years ahead, you're going to see people from all different parts of the world getting an opportunity to go and, look, among the stars.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Inspiration 4, about your mission. How long the flight will last and when is it planned to launch?
So we're going to launch later this year. We're targeting October of 2021, and it's going to be several days. So we're still working out some of the details, and we'll release it on our inspiration4.com website soon. But it's going to be several days, probably like 3 days.
Mm-hmm. So few people are chosen to be astronauts, as we know, because, European Space Agency yesterday, they announced that they are looking for astronauts for the first time since 2008. But you will take 3 random people. What does it take to join the journey along with you?
Well, you're totally correct. You have a better chance of getting hit by lightning than becoming a NASA astronaut.
That's sad.
But that's changing. And like I said, Inspiration 4 is kind of the first step in that great direction. So how we are selecting the crew, and we're trying to be very thoughtful about it because this is such a significant first. And what we're doing is selecting one person to represent the mission spirit of hope. And she is a childhood cancer survivor who was treated at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And then she grew up to become a healthcare worker, and she helps children today at St. Jude defeat cancer. We are announcing her as a crew member in just a few days, so I'm really excited about that. And then there's 2 other seats available on the Inspiration 4 mission. And we have opened it up to people to go on the inspiration4.com website and make a donation. And we will be selecting someone at random at the end of the month to have that opportunity to join Inspiration 4. And they will represent the mission spirit of generosity. And then the final 4th crew member will be an entrepreneur, somebody who's creating a website on our Shift4 Shop e-commerce platform, and then sharing that vision on social media and telling people why their business should be elevated to the stars. And then through an independent judging process, we will select the 4th and final crew member for the mission.
But as far as I know, it's only this invitation is only available to the citizens of the USA, and Lithuanians cannot participate as well, can they?
No, that's true. And it's really unfortunate because we would have loved to have made this kind of grand fundraising and crew selection process available to the entire world. The problem is in the United States, there's regulatory approval in order to, have access to space technology. And there just wasn't enough time since we're selecting our crew members in the beginning of March and going right into training. But this will not be the last mission. I've been to SpaceX's facilities a number of times. They're building a lot of rockets. And they're not just building those rockets for the people of the United States, they're building those rockets for the world. It's Elon's mission to make space accessible and affordable for all of humankind. So even though Inspiration 4 might be starting as a United States mission, the ones that will surely follow will be open to the world.
Talking about SpaceX and Elon and what they are doing regarding spaceflight and space exploration, why did you decide to buy out all of the seats in the spaceship? How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I mean, this was collaboration with SpaceX, this entire opportunity. I've been pursuing, this for 13 years. I went to Baikonur in Kazakhstan to see the Soyuz launch in 2008, and that was part of this commercial space industry. So I've been pursuing this a long time with them. What I did not expect is that the opportunity would come so fast this year, and I did not expect it to be the first all-civilian mission to space. But when it was made available, the thought process, of course, was how do you make this so, inspiring, so impactful to the world? And that's why we came up with this unique crew selection process for everyday people and this grand fundraising goal for such an important organization like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
Well, I hope your example will be an example to Lithuanians. Maybe someone will decide to follow you, and that would be really, really cool. And given your background, what's the coolest part for you about the Crew Dragon resilience, about the spaceship, as I understand, that will be taking you up to the stars?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. So I've been a pilot for, nearly 20 years. I've flown all sorts of aircraft, ex-military aircraft and, experimental aircraft. So, one of the greatest, I think, challenges and the pinnacle of a flying career for someone like me is to fly a spacecraft in orbit. So I'm very excited about that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Will these random people that you will select and you will take along with you for this flight, how will they be trained? And what does the training program for such newly born astronauts would look like?
Well, it's the same as the NASA astronauts will go through. So when NASA certifies a spacecraft for human flight, they certify everything, including the training program. So as soon as we select our crew members in the beginning of March, we're going to roll right into training, and we're going to be training all the way through launch later this year. So that's simulations of everything that's supposed to go right and everything that could possibly go wrong. It's water survival training. It's academics on orbital mechanics and how the spacecraft systems function. So it's a lot to learn, but I think we have the time and we'll get it done.
Have you already started preparing for the flight?
A little bit. So I've been to SpaceX several times and I've been in the simulator quite a bit. But the formal training doesn't really begin until the full crew is selected, in a couple weeks.
You mentioned the simulator. Can you tell me more about that?
It's an exact replica of the Dragon spacecraft. So, it's not very roomy, but neither is Dragon, and that's by but it has all of the same systems, all of the touchscreens and controls that you would find in the actual spacecraft. So that's what we'll be training mostly in.
Is it in any way similar to flying a plane?
It actually is. The interface and the controls are very intuitive. It actually looks a little bit easier in some ways than some of the older planes I've flown that don't have as much automation or technology. But there's a fair amount of similarities.
Mm-hmm. So there has been some debate going on if people who aren't trained as astronauts should be able to go into space. What would you say to this?
Well, I'd say we are being trained as astronauts. So, the FAA rules in the United States, classify us as commercial astronauts. So, I think the big difference here is we didn't start as astronauts. We didn't train our whole lives to become astronauts, but the training that we're going to receive prior to going up and launching into space will be the same that, NASA astronauts for a similar mission would go through.
Mm-hmm. So since the space flight itself is changing, what does it take to become an astronaut nowadays? Because it used to be, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it used to be a lot different.
Well, I think that that's all being rewritten right now. Up until this mission, you would have to be a very, very select few. And again, your chances were better being hit by lightning. You're a test pilot, you're a scientist, and it was a very hard path. But I think like the regular commercial aviation industry, of 100 years ago, what starts as a select few can quickly become available to everyone. And I think 10, 15, or 20 years from now, you're going to see a lot more everyday people that are going to be able to go and have an opportunity to explore, among the stars and maybe even, set foot on other worlds. So it's all being rewritten right now with this mission.
So talking about other worlds, you will be flying during the Inspiration 4 mission, you will be flying around Earth. Where would you like to travel if we had technology capable of traveling through space much, much faster?
Well, I've never been asked that question before, but I certainly, like I think a lot of people who are, Star Wars or Star Trek fans, imagine, what it would be like to travel to, distant worlds and just have a different perspective on our universe. So I can't say that there's any one particular planet that I'd look forward to stepping on more than others. I think it's just about going out and exploring the unknown.
Yeah, that sounds really motivational. And how do you see private space travel opening up the exploration of our solar system?
Yeah, I mean, you have to start somewhere. Right now, well, even if you go back 20 years ago to the space shuttle, that was like over $1 billion every time the space shuttle went into low Earth orbit. And if that's what it's going to cost every time you have to send a human being into space, we're not getting anywhere. We're not going to new worlds. We're not going beyond our solar system. You have to make it more affordable first. And that's what Elon and SpaceX have done with self-landing rocket technology, is they've brought the cost down to put anything in orbit, whether it's cargo or human beings. They've brought it down substantially, right? And that's the first step, because once you can start getting things in orbit at a much lower cost, then you can build more space stations, you can build more gateways to refuel spacecraft, and then you can go farther and farther and farther because it's going to cost you less to do it. So we got to start somewhere, and I think, again, Inspiration 4 is a big step in that right direction. But once we make space affordable, then we can make it more accessible, and that's what's happening right now.
And it is really nice that you are setting a very good example to others as well. So my final question, my final topic, actually, what would be your message to the younger generation? Because people in Lithuania, young people, kids, children, they can dream that they want to become an astronaut when they grow up, but they can't do that now because Lithuania has no spaceflight program and we are not members, full members of the European Space Agency. So what would you say to our children, to the younger Lithuanians?
Well, first, I'm a big fan of Lithuania. We actually, our only European operation for my company is based in Vilnius. So I visited several times. I'm a huge fan. And my message really would be is, look, I think anything is possible. We're making progress as a society all the time. I mean, think about 20 years ago, there was no high-speed internet that was available to everyday people. And you go back 100 years and there was no commercial, airline travel. If you wanted to go across the Atlantic Ocean, you were probably doing it on a ship and it was going to probably take a week. And now you can do it in 5 hours. So it's all about steps in the right direction. So, to me, it doesn't matter where you're growing up in the world today. I know 20 years from now, there's going to be a lot more people that have the opportunities to become astronauts than they do today. And the message we want to send with Inspiration 4 is that there's all sorts of possibilities in the world, not just up there among the stars, but what can be accomplished down here on Earth as well.
So thank you very much, and thank you for your time and for your really inspiring answers.
Thank you.
Visai netrukus po mūsų pokalbio Jared jau oficialiai paskelbė, kad raketoje prie jo prisijungs 29 metų Hayley Arsenault. Ji dirba vaikų ligoninėje, kuriai renkamos lėšos ir pati vaikystėje įveikė vėžį. Anot Jared, Hayley atvejai simbolizuoja viltį. Jau beveik 60 metų žmonija domisi Marsu ir ten siunčia robotus, kurie renka informaciją apie planetos atmosferą, geologiją ir chemiją. Vasarį Marsą pasiekė net 3 Liepą ten išsiųstos misijos. Jungtinių Arabų Emiratų Hope, kuri tyrinės planetos orus, Kinijos Tianwen-1, kuri tyrinės Marso geologiją, ir Jungtinių valstijų Perseverance, kuri ieškos senovinės gyvybės liekanų, o kartu rinks daugiau duomenų, padėsiančių kelionėms į Marsą paruošti būsimus astronautus. Kada Lietuva turės pirmą astronautą? Deja, dar teks palaukti. Vasario 16 dieną Europos kosmoso agentūra paskelbė, kad pirmą kartą nuo 2008 metų ir apskritai trečią kartą nuo agentūros įkūrimo 1975 metais ieško astronautų. Kandidatuoti gali Europos kosmoso agentūros pilnateisių ir asocijuotų narių piliečiai. Iš Baltijos šalių būsimus astronautus gali siūlyti Latvija ir Estija, bet ne Lietuva. Nors nuo 2010 metų esame bendradarbiaujanti valstybė, dar tik ruošiamės asocijuotai narystiai. Todėl pirmo astronauto gali tekti palaukti dar ilgai. Primenu, kad laidos įrašus rasite Delfi portale. Ačiū, kad žiūrėjote ir likite su Delfi televizija.